Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take source material and really distill it down into those key insights you need so you're genuinely well informed. Today, we're diving into a book that's really had a massive impact on millions, Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, a guide to spiritual enlightenment. This deep dive is for you, the curious learner, looking to grasp what really matters, quickly, thoroughly, but without getting swamped by information. We've got quite a stack of sources here, reviews, bits from the preface, early chapters, even a look into Tolle's own backstory. Our mission, to unpack this really powerful text, get into its core ideas, and figure out why so many people find it, well, life-changing.
And it's fascinating, isn't it? Just the sheer weight of praise this book got. You see sources calling it a jewel of clarity and insight. That was Tom Oakley. Norman Snicken called it a word-of-mouth bestseller. And Stephen Gautry from Watkins Books, he saw great things for it early on. And it really did spread mainly through word of mouth at first before hitting #1 on the New York Times list, getting translated into, 30 languages. Even in India, often seen as the birthplace of all this spiritual searching, it's a bestseller. That really says something about its universal appeal.
That resonance, it seems to start with Tolle himself, with his own pretty intense personal story. Let's start there. It began with a period of really deep suffering, didn't it?
It really did. Tolle talks about living with, I think he calls it almost continuous anxiety and periods of suicidal depression. Right up until he was nearly 30, he specifically recalls this one night, just after his 29th birthday. He woke up feeling just absolute dread, a deep, deep loathing for everything, including himself.
Wow. Okay, so what happened then in that moment of just utter despair? What shifted?
Well, he had this really strange thought. I cannot live with myself any longer.
Hmm.
And that simple thought sparked this realization. Wait, if I cannot live with myself, there must be two of me.
Hmm.
The I and the self, the I can't stand. And then he wondered, maybe only one is real. That insight, he says, just stopped his mind cold. He felt drawn into this vortex of energy, felt intense fear, heard the words resist nothing, and then just fell into what he calls a void.
Goodness. So what was it like coming out of that, the immediate aftermath?
He woke up to a bird chirping, and he saw it like a precious diamond.
Yeah.
The dawn light seemed like love itself. Everything felt brand new, fresh, and pristine.
Oh.
And for the next 5 months, he apparently lived in this state of just uninterrupted, deep peace and bliss.
5 months.
Yeah. He realized later the suffering had kind of forced his consciousness out of identifying with that unhappy, fearful self. It revealed his true nature, as he calls it, the ever-present I am, pure consciousness. He even spent, get this, almost 2 years just sitting on park benches feeling intense joy.
That's quite the origin story. So how does that personal, cataclysmic experience shape the book itself?
Well, the structure really reflects it. It's mostly question and answer, right? Often taken from his seminars, his counseling sessions. And Tully notes that these Q&As move between two levels. First, pointing out what is false in you, the mind stuff. And second, showing you how to free yourself from enslavement to the mind, how to stay in that enlightened state.
And he even puts that pause symbol in the book, telling readers to actually stop and feel the truth. That's pretty unusual for a book, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
It's encouraging more than just, mental understanding. It's about a feeling response, a recognition from deep within. He says something like, I can't tell you any spiritual truth you don't already know deep down. I can only remind you of what you've forgotten.
Like it's activating something already there.
Exactly. Less about learning new stuff, more about remembering.
Okay, let's get into one of the core ideas then. It sounds so simple, but it really challenges how most of us think about ourselves. You are not your mind.
Precisely. And he uses that parable, the beggar is sitting on the box of gold for decades, totally oblivious.
All right.
So basically, if you haven't found your real wealth, that radiant joy of being, that deep peace, you're still a beggar, even if you're materially rich. It's about inner wealth.
So this enlightenment he talks about, it sounds so lofty. What does he actually mean by it?
He actually brings it right down to earth.
Yeah.
He uses the Buddha's definition, the end of suffering. Simple as that.
The end of suffering. Okay.
Yeah, there's nothing superhuman about it, he insists. It's your natural state, this feeling of oneness with being connected to something vast, indestructible. It's about rediscovering who you are, not becoming someone else.
He uses that term being a lot. How does that relate to concepts like God? People might wonder.
Yeah, he addresses that. He suggests the word God has become a bit, empty of meaning through misuse over time. It creates mental pictures, maybe ego traps. But being, he offers it as an open concept. You can't really form a mental image of it. It's just your essence, accessible as that feeling of your own presence,
Yeah.
the I am before you add anything to it, like I am this or I am that.
Okay, so if being is our essence, what's the biggest thing stopping us from feeling it, according to Toll?
He's very clear. It's identification with your mind, which makes thinking compulsive.
Compulsive thinking.
Yeah, he actually calls not to be able to stop thinking a dreadful affliction. And he points to Descartes, I think, therefore I am, as the fundamental mistake, equating thinking with being, identity with thought.
So we're basically stuck thinking our thoughts are us,
That's the core idea.
which suggests all that mental noise. It's not just harmless background chatter. It's actually detrimental.
Exactly. He goes so far as to say, thinking has become a disease, like cells dividing uncontrollably. The mind's a great tool, he says, if you use it right. But the problem is when it uses you. That's the disease, the delusion, believing you are your mind, the instrument has taken you over.
Okay, but does that mean all thinking is bad? What about creativity or problem solving?
No, not at all. He's careful to distinguish thinking from consciousness. Thinking is just a small aspect of consciousness. He argues that real artists, true creators, work from a place of no mind, from inner stillness. Even great scientists like Einstein apparently said thinking was only a minor part of the actual creative breakthrough. Tolle suggests the lack of creativity in many scientists isn't because they can't think, but because they can't stop thinking. It's about getting beyond the constant chatter.
Right. So if identifying with the mind is the big issue, how do we actually, break free? What's the method?
His main advice is surprisingly simple. Start listening to the voice in your head as often as you can.
Just listen.
Yeah. He calls it watching the thinker, being the witnessing presence. But the key is listening impartially. No judgment, no immediate reaction. Just observe the thoughts.
And what's supposed to happen when you do that, when you just watch?
Well, he says that sense of presence that I am feeling, it isn't a thought itself. It comes from beyond the mind. So as you watch, the thought kind of loses its grip on you. It subsides. And this creates a gap in the mental stream, a moment of no mind.
A gap.
Exactly. And in those gaps, you start feeling stillness, peace, and this subtle emanation of joy from deep inside, the joy of being.
So it's not like zoning out or going into a trance.
No, quite the opposite. He stresses you're actually more alert, more awake than when you're lost in thought. You're fully present. He calls this the single most vital step towards enlightenment, learning to disidentify from your mind. It's about waking up, not tuning out.
Okay, we've talked a lot about thoughts, but what about emotions? They often feel so powerful, maybe even separate from thoughts. How does he connect them?
That's a crucial point. He clarifies that when he uses the word mind, he doesn't just mean thoughts. It includes emotions and all those unconscious reactive patterns too.
Oh, okay.
He sees emotion fundamentally as the body's reaction to your mind. So you have an attacking thought, and the body reacts with the energy of anger preparing to fight. And here's a really interesting bit. If your thoughts and emotions seem to conflict, he says the thought will be the lie, the emotion will be the truth. Emotions are often a more direct reflection of your inner state.
So watching our emotions is just as important as watching our thoughts then.
Absolutely. He suggests making it a habit. Just ask yourself, what's going on inside me right now? And then just watch. Feel the energy of the emotion without getting lost in the story around it. And this leads him to that key concept of the pain body.
Right, the pain body. Tell us more about that.
It's basically the accumulation of old emotional pain that hasn't been fully faced and dissolved, like this negative energy field living in your body and mind. And it tends to have two modes: dormant, just sitting there, and active, when something in the present triggers it because it resonates with an old wound.
So how do we deal with it when it flares up, when that old pain gets activated?
The key, again, is awareness. The moment you observe it, feel its energy inside you, and consciously bring your attention to it, the identification breaks.
Let's stop being it.
Exactly. You bring in presence, that higher dimension of consciousness. You become the witness, the watcher of the pain body. And that very act of conscious witnessing starts to dissolve it. Because, as he puts it, unconsciousness creates it. Consciousness transmutes it into itself. It leads to the realization that, ultimately, all pain is an illusion, made real only by our identification.
Wow. That sounds like it could really cut through some deep-seated fears.
It absolutely aims to.
Yeah.
He argues that most psychological fear isn't about a real immediate danger. It's almost always about something that might happen in the future.
Right, the what-ifs.
Yeah, this anxiety gap that comes from being lost in future projections instead of the now. He says you can always cope with the present moment, but you can't cope with a mental projection of the future. And ultimately, he traces all fear back to the ego's fundamental fear of death, of annihilation. Even needing to be right in an argument, he says, comes from that fear.
And what about that nagging feeling lots of people have, that sense of not being good enough, or just a fundamental feeling of lack?
He sees that as baked into the egoic mind. The ego is this derived sense of self, always looking outside itself for completion, possessions, success, power, relationships, whatever.
Trying to fill a hole.
A bottomless hole, yeah. And he forces you to confront the fact that you'll have to let go of all those external things eventually. Death, he says, is a stripping away of all that is not you. The secret, he suggests, is to die before you die and find that there is no death. It's about letting go of those false identifications now.
Okay, so if the mind causes so many issues, the ego, the suffering, does that mean the solution is endless mental analysis? Trying to figure it all out?
Now, quite the opposite, actually. He states very clearly, the problems of the mind cannot be solved on the level of the mind. Once you kind of grasp the basic issue, identifying with the mind creates the ego. He says there isn't much more you need to understand intellectually. The mind's a tool, a wonderful one. Just don't mistake it for who you are.
And the absolute key to getting beyond the mind, he says again and again, is the now.
Absolutely. The now is the only point that can take you beyond the limited confines of the mind. It's your only access point to being, to that timeless reality. And he makes that really mind-bending statement. Nothing ever happened in the past, it happened in the now. Nothing will ever happen in the future, it will happen in the now. All experience is now.
That's where it gets really fascinating. He's saying the present moment, the one we usually ignore, is the actual doorway to the spiritual dimension.
Yes, and he pulls in examples from everywhere. Jesus saying, take no thought for the morrow, or don't look back once you start plowing. The lilies living with ease in the timeless now. Then you have Zen, walking along the razor's edge of now. Sufism, the Sufi is the son of time present. And Meister Eckhart, the medieval mystic, saying, time is what keeps the light from reaching us. There is no greater obstacle to God than time. It's a consistent message across traditions.
It really does sound like most of our unhappiness stems from mentally living anywhere but right here, right now.
That's precisely his argument. All negativity, he claims, is caused by an accumulation of psychological time and denial of the present. So all that unease, anxiety, stress, worry, that's too much future. And guilt, regret, resentment, sadness, that's too much past. Right. And he makes this provocative point. Even if all your current problems vanish today, if you hadn't become more present, more conscious, you'd soon create a new set of similar problems.
Right.
It's the mindset that generates them.
So practically speaking, what does this mean day to day? How do we do this?
He suggests some really simple but profound practices. First, die to the past every moment. You don't need it. Just let it go.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the second is, wherever you are, be there totally. Really commit your attention to the present. And if a situation feels unbearable, he offers 3 choices. Get out of it, change it, or accept it completely. No inner resistance. He also warns against waiting as a mental habit, whether it's waiting in line or waiting for life to get better. Waiting means you want the future, not the present.
He even reframes prosperity, saying true prosperity is basically gratitude for the present moment and the fullness of life now.
Yes. It's about finding the life underneath your life situation. Engaging your senses, being fully where you are. And this ties into purpose, too. We have our outer purpose, goals, achieving things.
Yeah.
But there's also an inner purpose, deepening your being right here in the timeless now. It's about the quality of your presence.
He also talks about inhabiting the body fully as a way to stay present. What does that mean practically?
It's about actually feeling the life inside you, the inner energy field of your body. He suggests trying to feel the aliveness in your hands, arms, legs, feet, abdomen, chest. Feeling it all is one energy field.
Just bringing awareness inside.
Exactly. He says this body awareness keeps you present. It anchors you in the now. It's a direct way out of obsessive thinking and into immediate felt reality.
He makes some pretty big claims about the physical benefits too, right?
He does. He suggests this in-body awareness can actually slow down aging and significantly strengthen the immune system. His analogy is that consciousness entering the body is like a light getting brighter, making the physical structure somehow less dense.
Mm-hmm.
And he has that line, most illnesses creep in when you are not present in the body. If the master is not present in the house, all kinds of shady characters will take up residence there. Presence as a form of protection almost.
He calls our true nature the unmanifested. How does he say we access that? It sounds very abstract.
Well, that feeling of the inner body, is one key portal, he says. A doorway to the unmanifested, the formless source, being itself. But other portals are more immediate too. The now itself is a portal. Simply stopping thought, even for a moment, is a portal. That could start with just taking a conscious breath or really looking at a flower with intense alertness without labeling it.
And he mentions silence and space as portals, too.
Yes. Think about it. Sound is born from silence and dies back into it.
Yeah.
So if you pay more attention to the silence around and between sounds, you cultivate inner silence. The mind stills. Similarly, everything exists in space. If you shift your awareness from the objects in space to the space itself, you're also shifting attention away from mind objects, thoughts, to the space of no mind, pure consciousness, the unmanifested.
What about love? Where does that fit in? Is love a portal?
Interestingly, he says no, it isn't. His view is, as soon as one of the portals is open, love is present in you as the feeling realization of oneness.
Ah, so it's what comes through the portal.
Exactly. Love isn't a portal, it's what comes through the portal into this world. It's the expression of that connection, not the way to get there.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit. If our minds are usually just interacting with other minds, what does this mean for our relationships with people?
Well, he suggests that's the problem right there. That most human relationships consist mainly of minds interacting with each other, not of human beings communicating, being in communion.
Just ego talking to ego.
Pretty much. And that's why, he argues, most relationships are not rooted in being, and they inevitably become sources of pain, dominated by conflict.
He makes that stark claim that most love relationships become love-hate relationships before long. Why does he say that?
Because, he argues, true love has no opposite. If your love can flip into hate or resentment, then it wasn't really love in the first place. It was more likely, he suggests, a strong ego needing the other person to complete you, to fill that sense of lack.
All right.
And when that person inevitably fails to meet those needs perfectly, the underlying fear and pain resurface, and you attack or blame them. It's conditional, based on need, not unconditional being.
So how do we transform relationships then, based on this?
The key, he says, is presence. For love to flourish, the light of your presence needs to be strong enough so that you no longer get taken over by the thinker or the pain body and mistake them for who you are. And he offers this as the greatest catalyst for change. Completely accepting your partner exactly as they are, without needing to judge them or change them.
Complete acceptance.
Yeah, that allows the relationship itself to become your spiritual practice, your sadhana.
But does that mean both people need to be conscious, need to be doing this for it to work?
He puts the responsibilities squarely on the individual. Sanity consciousness can only come into this world through you. You can't wait for the world or your partner to get enlightened first. You may wait forever. He also makes an interesting observation that women might find it generally easier to feel and be in their bodies, potentially making them naturally closer to being and enlightenment than men.
And what about that common phrase, having a good relationship with yourself?
He questions the whole premise. He asks radically, do you need to have a relationship with yourself at all? Why can't you just be yourself?
Just be.
In enlightenment, he says, you are yourself.
Huh.
The you and yourself merge. There's no split.
Yeah.
So the one relationship you don't have anymore is the one with yourself. And once you give up that internal conflict, he claims, all your other relationships will be love relationships.
Wow. Okay, that brings us to another huge concept, surrender. That word can sound quite negative to people, like giving up.
Right. And Tolle is quick to clarify. True surrender, he says, isn't passive resignation. It's not just putting up with things. Instead, it's this simple but profound wisdom of yielding to rather than opposing the flow of life. It means accepting the present moment right now, unconditionally, relinquishing that inner resistance to what is.
So it's an internal state, not necessarily inaction.
Exactly. He says, surrender is perfectly compatible with taking action, initiating change, or achieving goals. You can still act, but the energy behind the action is different. It comes from acceptance, not resistance. It's a joyful celebration of life energy, not a struggle. And since your state of consciousness now determines your future, surrender is actually the most powerful way to create positive change.
But what about really difficult situations like disaster strikes or serious illness? How can surrender possibly apply then?
He sees those extreme limits situations as potentially powerful catalysts. They can crack the ego's shell, force you into surrender, and paradoxically, into awakening. He talks about people on death row finding deep peace in their final hours because they were forced into complete acceptance of the unacceptable, forced into surrender. His view is that ultimately all the suffering in the world serves to push humanity towards realizing who we are beyond name and form.
It sounds a bit like the way of the cross from some spiritual traditions, finding transformation through suffering.
That's a good way to put one path. Tolle calls it a complete reversal. Your worst nightmare, your cross, becomes the best thing that happened because it forces surrender, phrases you into death, the death of the ego, making you as nothing, like God, who is also no thing. He calls that enlightenment through suffering, being dragged kicking and screaming into the kingdom of heaven, so to speak.
But there's another way.
Yes, there's enlightenment consciously chosen, which means choosing to let go of attachment to past and future, choosing to make the disaster now your primary focus. You don't have to wait for disaster.
So we have a choice in how we relate to pain, even intense suffering.
Yes, that's the crucial point. If you cannot accept what is outside, then accept what is inside. If you can't change the external situation, accept your internal reaction.
Accept the feeling itself.
Exactly. Allow the grief, the fear, the despair to be there. Witness it without labeling. Embrace it. And then, he says, watch how the miracle of surrender transmutes deep suffering into deep peace. Because fundamentally, presence removes time. Without time, no suffering, no negativity can survive.
We have covered an incredible amount today, really exploring these deep insights from the power of now, from Tolle's own transformation, to really practical ideas about getting out of the mind, living in the now, and finding peace through surrender.
And zooming out, Tolle frames this whole thing in a bigger context. He suggests humanity itself is potentially making a quantum leap in the evolution of consciousness, an awakening from the dream of separation, of being just matter and form. He sees it as a collective shift, not just individual. The very fact we're discussing this, he might say, is a clear sign that the new consciousness is gaining a foothold on the planet.
And the essential takeaway for you, the listener, is that this kind of profound shift isn't some far-off goal. It's accessible right here, right now, in this moment.
Which leads to a really interesting question to ponder, doesn't it? If Tolle is right, if our attachment to psychological time really is the root of so much suffering, what would a society that truly operated from the now actually look like? How would it function? What would be its defining features?
Definitely something to think about as you go about your day, maybe embracing just a little more of that power of now. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.